Welcome to another Insider Special Report. I'm Jarret Johnson, and I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, man, another beautiful sunny day here in the hub. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. How about yourself, Jarret?
I'm good. And football season, man, it's creeping up. We had Big 12 Media Day, which always signals, the return of another season. Fall camp coming up, I believe, opens August 3rd. Of course, the season kicks off September 1st in Houston against Ole Miss. All the talk, speaking of Big 12 Media Day, was around, as far as Texas Tech, was around the defense. And in fact, 3 first-team all Big 12 selections preseason, which is pretty unheard of, right? Not exactly typical Tech. So I'm really excited to get your impression, though, since there's a lot of hype around this defense. Just how good do you think this defense could be this upcoming season?
The best we've seen at Tech in a long, long time. I really believe that. I mean, I think, and the deal is, when all is said and done at the end of the season, and you look at the stats, it may not look that great. Because A, you're playing in the Big 12, and even when the Big 12 maybe isn't quite as high-powered offensively as you might expect, it has been in the past, still there's some pretty darn good offenses out there, and they're going to gouge you. I don't care how good you are. So that's going to bring them down a little bit. And I'm sorry, but I just don't think they're going to get a whole lot of help from the offense. I'm afraid there's going to be a lot of short drives, and that defense is going to be thrown out there a lot, and that means more yards, more plays against you, And fortunately, because of their depth, I think this is a much deeper defense than we've seen at Tech in a long, long time. That will help out in terms of having to deal with an awful lot of plays. So I think they're better prepared for that sort of a situation than they have been in the past. But still, statistically, at the end of the season, it's not going to look like world beaters. But I think the reality is there'll definitely be a top-tier Big 12 defense this year. Certainly top 5, something like that. I really like it. I think they're going to be darn good.
You mentioned the depth. It's been a long time coming because, man, how many years have you covered Texas Tech football where there was like no depth? I mean, you couldn't even name the third string guy, And a lot of the guys that was the backup at one position was the backup of the other. Like, on one side was also the backup of the other defensive end or defensive tackle position. That's just not the case now. You have guys really at every level of the defense who are capable backups, and even like third stringer guys who we know are good football players. I'm not saying they're world beaters, but they have played Power 5 football and performed at least admirably. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to hold up at the point of attack, or they can cover a guy for 3 seconds, or they can just tackle, which, let's be honest, 2 years ago, just a guy who can tackle in open space was like, oh, world beater, we finally found a guy. No, they have good tacklers. Like I said, this isn't exactly like a blazing speed defense, although at linebacker, they are exceptionally fast. I think for the first time in my life, at least as long as I've been watching Texas Tech, I couldn't believe it, but in Austin, when the linebackers were matched up with running backs out of the backfield, Tech had the clear advantage in the open field and speed. When was the last time you could say that? I mean, and you've been watching a lot longer than I have, buddy Joe. Can you remember a time where that was the case?
No, not right offhand. Really can't. And then the linebackers probably the heart and soul and the strength of the defense. And I mean, back to that depth again. How many times in the past could you have a guy like Rico Jeffers and a guy like Tony Jones, and they're not even starting? I mean, those guys are starters any other time within the last probably 15 years or close to it. And those guys are probably coming off the bench this year.
Well, you look at a guy like Lonzel Gilmore, who's played a lot of snaps, and he may be third string at strong side defensive end. The way Quentin Yance came on during the spring, and then, of course, Eli Howard is, you could argue, maybe after Dakota is your best player, really. I mean, if you follow the team, as far as difference maker, you have, Jay Sean, who's great, Justice, who, of course, is a ball hawk, and the linebackers you mentioned. But, I mean, Eli Howard is a very good player there, strong side defensive end. So you have a guy, some known guys coming off the bench and providing depth for you.
Yep, I know. Got to make old David Gibbs a little bit happier and resting a little bit easier at night and sprouting a few less gray hairs than he was in the past. So, that's just a real comfort. If a guy gets nicked up a little bit, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, it's a good deal.
One more thing, or actually a couple more things I want to mention. Some of these redshirt guys that we've heard about, and I know I get a little nervous saying that, but I've actually seen them play a little bit in the spring. Like I said, we had more access this year, which was great. We had more access this spring than really any other time in the Kingsbury era to see actual practice, not just them running calisthenics and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Nelson Mabanasaur. Keep that. You know, if you're on the site following us, you've heard that name a lot, but keep that name in your head. Gibbs said he's going to be a household name amongst Red Raider fans, and that he would have played in years past, but just they didn't have to play him, so they're able to develop him. He's going to be a good one on the defensive line, can play multiple spots. And then there's some guys like Adrian Fry, you know, guys like that in the secondary who are redshirted, John Davis, who are expected to come in and at least augment what they already have as far as depth. And then finally, Mighty Joe, I got to say the junior college second-year leap. I'm really looking for Vontae Dorsey at safety, who he looked tremendous when I saw him in spring. Of course, you know he's going to hit, but I think he actually is more of a guided missile now rather than just kind of running around just finding somebody to hit like he was last year. Just because, I mean, coming in, you don't necessarily, I mean, especially when they're going full speed as fast as they do in Power 5 football. So he didn't know where he was supposed to be half the time. You know what I mean? Now it's obvious he knows what his job is, and he's a physical presence out there. And then Octavius Morgan is a guy who I think was a disappointment last year. I mean, he did tell me that he was a disappointment last year, but I think a lot of that stemmed from a really bad shoulder injury he suffered at the end of spring ball last year. I think it was the spring game, actually. He gutted through it, never complained about it, at least publicly, but he wasn't the same. He wasn't able to be physical at the line of scrimmage, nor as physical in the air. He's looked like a different player this offseason now that shoulder is healed. He told me he's 100%. I look for him to have a big senior season here in the Hub.
Yeah, I think Octavius is a guy that's going to make the same sort of leap that Will Smith did.
Great comparison.
That in different positions, obviously,
right.
But I think you're going to see that sort of a transition, and he's going to be a difference maker back there. Sort of a lockdown type of a cornerback. You know, you don't get too many of those guys around. So if he's in that neighborhood, that kind of a player, then he really helps your back seven a great deal, and I think he's going to do that.
Yeah, you mentioned a linebacker in Will Smith. Coincidentally, I think he was the best linebacker up until at least the first three guys, and I'm talking about Dakota, Jordan, and of course Rico. He was the best linebacker you've probably had of the Kingsbury era, you know, since these guys came up. And then Braden Stringer, he announced he was leaving. He's actually come back, so that just adds more depth. He's another guy. Hey, we know he'll look somebody up, you know, in the running game, and at least isn't a liability in the passing game. So that's just more depth for you. A depth of bounds. I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait for it to kick off and it actually happen instead of us talking about it. But at least we do get to talk about a defense here in the Hub. So great stuff from you, Mighty Joe, as always. Thank y'all for watching, and until next time.